Imagine waking up every morning, not knowing if you'll eat today, not knowing if the cold will kill you before nightfall, not knowing if the massive creature outside your shelter, the one with tusks the size of tree trunks, will charge. This wasn't a nightmare. For thousands of humans, this was Tuesday. Between roughly 115,000 and 11,700 years ago, Earth was in the grip of the Ice Age. Temperatures were 10 to 15 degrees colder than today. Ice sheets buried half of North America and most of Europe. And yet, we survived. Not just survived, we thrived. First, let's understand the scale of what our ancestors faced. At the peak of the Ice Age, sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than today. Britain was connected to mainland Europe. You could walk from Siberia to Alaska. The Sahara wasn't a desert, it was a patchwork of grass and scrub. The planet looked completely different. But it wasn't just ice. The Ice Age created the Mammoth steppe, a vast, cold grassland stretching from Western Europe to eastern Siberia. And this grassland was alive. Woolly mammoths, cave lions, giant elk with antlers wider than a car, woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison. It were dangerous, brutal, and absolutely packed with food if you were clever enough to catch it. And Homo sapiens? We were very clever. If there is one single invention that saved humanity during the Ice Age, it is this: fire. Humans had been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years. But during the Ice Age, our relationship with fire became something deeper, almost sacred. We know from sites like Dolny Vestonish, dating back 26,000 years, that Ice Age camps were built around fire pits. Not next to them, around them. Fire was the center of everything. It kept them warm through nights that dropped to -30. It cooked meat, it hardened spears, it gathered people together. Because surviving the Ice Age wasn't just about staying warm. It was a matter of staying together. Here's a fact that doesn't get enough credit. Clothing may have saved our species. And so, each night, someone stayed awake, keeping the fire alive, keeping the darkness back. Because fire wasn't just warmth. It was protection. Warmth, cooked food, protection from predators. Czech Republic, 26,000 years ago, archaeologists found one of the oldest fire pits ever excavated. Humans are not built for cold weather. Almost no fur, little body fat, and we sweat. Catastrophic in freezing temperatures. So how did a hairless primate colonize ice-covered Eurasia? They made fur, bone needles found across Russia and France, some dating to 50,000 years ago, tell us Ice Age humans were sewing. Layered garments, hoods, fitted boots, mittens. Without layered fitted clothing, humans simply cannot function below -20 degrees Celsius. Our ancestors figured this out. With a bone needle, sinew thread, and animal hide, they built themselves a second skin. The needles found at Kostenki in Russia are barely 8 centimeters long, but they may be among the most important objects in human history. Now let's talk about food, because fire and clothing won't save you if you can't eat. Megafauna roamed in huge numbers, but they were enormous, fast, and dangerous. Hunting a woolly mammoth with a sharpened stick seems insane. But Ice Age humans didn't hunt alone. Evidence from the Pavlov Hills in Moravia shows they used coordinated group tactics, driving animals toward cliffs and into gullies. They used fire to create panic and direction. One mammoth provided hundreds of kilograms of meat, bones for building, fat for fuel, hide for shelter, and ivory for tools. A single hunt could feed 20 to 30 people for weeks, and the Ice Age itself became their refrigerator. They stored meat in permafrost pits, frozen for months. The cold that threatened to kill them also preserved their food. When you think of Ice Age humans, you probably picture caves. And yes, caves were used. Lascaux, Altamira, Chauvet. These sites are extraordinary. But caves are rare, and they're not always where the food is. So when there was no cave, they built. At Mezherik in Ukraine, just south of Kyiv, archaeologists found 4 huts built almost entirely from mammoth bones. Over 150 bones per structure, arranged in deliberate interlocking patterns. Skulls for the base, leg bones for the walls, tusks arching overhead for the frame. These weren't desperate people clinging to survival. These were engineers. Here is possibly the most underrated survival tool of the Ice Age. Other people. Not just your own group, but other groups. Sometimes hundreds of kilometers away. Archaeologists have found marine shells at inland sites far from any ocean. Specific flint types far from their source. Art styles shared across vast distances. Ice Age humans maintained long-distance social networks. When food was scarce, they called on allies. When a technique worked, it spread. Anthropologists call this risk pooling. In the brutal lottery of the Ice Age, having friends far away wasn't a luxury. It was survival. There's one final thing that separated our ancestors from every other creature on Earth. Not their muscles, not their teeth, their minds. Ice Age humans made art. Detailed, beautiful, meaningful art. They were storytelling, planning, imagining futures that hadn't happened yet. A cave painting wasn't just decoration. It was a training tool, a ritual, a record. We were here. We survived this. The human brain, with its capacity for abstract thought, language, planning, and cooperation. That was the ultimate Ice Age survival tool. Every fire built, every garment sewn, every bone hut assembled. It all began in the mind. The Ice Age ended around 11,000 years ago. The glaciers retreated. The megafauna disappeared. But the people who walked out were not the same as those who walked in. They had been forged by cold, by hunger, by loss, and by an extraordinary capacity to adapt, cooperate, and imagine. Every person alive today is a descendant of someone who survived that world. Think about that. The next time you complain about the weather. Next time we're going into the caves themselves. The art, the rituals, the minds behind Lascaux and Chauvet. Subscribe and leave a comment. What do you want us to cover next? And remember, you come from survivors.